Hello, Facebook. These past few days, I've been having this theme inside of my mind about the concept of possibilities and the concept of impossibilities. And there's like a lot of stuff coming up. And I was thinking this morning, about a moment in my life when I was faced with a lady who claimed that something was impossible for me. And I just wanted to share because I want to make a bit of a statement around that, and maybe you have this too. Maybe you are confronted in your life in situations where you think things are impossible. So let me share you my story, and it's about when I almost lost my house. Okay, so in 2014, me and my partner, we separated. We decided to go our separate ways. And at that point, we were living in our house that we built together with our two children. And obviously, at some point, the question came like, what are we going to do with the house? And so my partner, my ex-partner, he was going to look for an apartment. And I was figuring out like, what am I going to do? Because I really wanted to keep the house, because obviously when you have children and you separate, I didn't want, it was already a lot of emotional turmoil for them. I didn't want to, to push them any further or to harm them any further and take their home base away. So I really, really wanted to try to keep the house and to at least maintain that space for them, right? So I started to look at my finances. I started to calculate everything. I was in the finance business, so that was easy for me. So I made a spreadsheet and I figured out, this is the money that I earn. I had my parents who supported me a little bit each month, and I was calculating like, what are all of my costs and can I make this? Can I make the mortgage for my house? Can I pay this? Can I make this happen so that me and my children can stay in our house? And so I did all these calculations, and turned out that, it would work. It was going to work. It was a pretty heavy mortgage, but, I could make it work. Considering all the expenses, I would not have to live in excess, but, I could make it work. So I was excited. I was like, yes, okay, great. I can, I'll be able to keep the house. And so at a certain point in time, I made an appointment with the notary, to shift the ownership. And obviously I had to contact the bank for the mortgage because it had to be transferred to. And I said, look, this is what's happening. Here's my calculation. I figured it out. Here's all the evidence. I can pay for the mortgage. It's going to be okay. So I hope this is okay for the bank to let me know. And so I didn't hear back from them. And I thought, probably okay. It's probably fine. And so I think it was a week from the notary appointment, I mailed the bank again. I said, look, what's going on? Because I need documents from the bank. I don't know how it went, but I needed to, documents to arrange stuff. I was like, are we good? And so I get a mail back, and this assistant goes like, oh yes, it's best you come around the office because the bank director wants to speak to you. And I'm like, uh-oh. That doesn't sound good. And I replied, well, is there a problem? And she didn't really want to say a lot. She was like, you need to come and speak to the bank director. I was like, okay. So, I just sensed that something was wrong. So I went to the bank director, which was a lady. I went to her office. And she sat me down, and she looked at me. This was 1 week before the notary to shift the house. And she looked at me and she said, we can't do this. I was like, what? I just felt like she put her hands around my throat and just pinched. She's like, it's not possible. You can't keep that house. That mortgage is way too high for you. I could you know, I could send your file to the headquarters, but it's going to be dismissed. And I'm like, okay, you haven't even tried? And it was like the whole thing with the banks. They feed, there's like this quote that your mortgage has to be like 1/3 of your income, which it wasn't. It was much more. But I was like, I have a spreadsheet. I have shown you all of my expense, all my insurance, all my costs. I can pay for this. It's okay. And you know what? My wage is going to come up. I make promotions. You know, it's going to get better and better. And she went like, I'm so sorry. It's impossible. It's not going to work. Even if I send it, they're going to dismiss it. I wouldn't go through all the trouble. I'm like, what? And in that moment, it was like, I was like completely devastated. I'm like, I just felt the house like just slipping away. I'm like, and I'm like also in shock of her not even doing an effort. And then the most crazy thing came, because I was like, well, is there any other way? And she was like, no. And she looked at me, because I started crying. I was emotional. I was like, my God, I did not expect this to happen. So I started to get emotional and like crying and trying to contain myself a bit. And she looked at me like, aw, poor you. And then she went on like, but, you know, maybe you and your partner can work things out. I'm like, what? I'm like here at the bank trying to figure out how I'm going to pay the house after a breakup, and you're telling me that maybe I should go back to my partner? Like, what are you doing? And then she went all like, maybe you can arrange something with him and that you can maybe do it. And I was like, stop. So I was like, I didn't even want to talk to her anymore. I was like, you're obviously not in support and not willing to do any effort to help me out. So I left the bank office and I stepped in the car and was like crying. I called my ex-partner, and he was very sweet. He was like, relax, we'll figure this out, we'll find something. I was like, oh, what just happened? And in that moment, there was something inside of me that went like, this is not gonna happen. Like, this is not gonna happen. Because I wanted the house so much, especially for the children. I had put my mind onto that, and it was like, I am just not willing to accept that this is going to happen. That I'm going to have to sell the house while I can pay for it. This is not going to happen. It's like this little part in me that went like, nope, I will not have this. And so by the time I got home, I remembered that there was someone working at the same bank who used to be a bank director in the village where we lived, and my parents knew him because we have the same bank. He's been around forever, and he was the guy who also arranged the loan for the house when we started out. And so, but he wasn't my bank director right now, he was somewhere else. But I was like, all of a sudden I remembered this guy, and I was like, I need to talk to him. Maybe he can do something. Maybe he has, I don't know, but I'll just call. So I immediately contacted him, and he said, yep, okay, come and see me. So I went to see him, and I told him the story. I told him what happened, and he looked at me and was like, really? Wow. Did she really do that? I'm like, it was his colleague. He was like, oh, well, that's not really good service. And so he was like, he looked at my file and he was like, sure, I'm gonna put that file down. I'm gonna write an incredible motivation. Your parents are backing up, no worries. And even if the headquarters won't accept, there's still a different way. We can still make your parents part of the owners. Okay, you have to go to the notary and you have to give them a part of the house, just a little part, and then their pension can also be calculated in that quotum, and then you're fine. And I'm like, thank goodness, someone is thinking. Someone is being, you know, creative. And I was like, okay, so it was like a complete weight lifted from my shoulders. So he made a request, he wrote a motivation, very elaborate, spent some time on it, and it got approved. It got approved from headquarters. They allowed me to take on the mortgage, and it turned out absolutely fine. And, you know, I remembered this today, just thinking about the aspects of possibilities and impossibilities. We use the word impossible so quickly. It's like impossible is like an overused word, especially when there's no way on how to do something. It's like when we can't see how, it's like impossible. Which is not true. Usually it's just that you're not seeing how. It doesn't mean the how isn't there, you're just not seeing it. It's not because one road closes that there aren't other roads, but you might just not have seen them yet. So the goal is to just keep pushing and to just keep looking until you find the other roads, and to not accept an impossibility. So I guess that's a bit of the message that I want to give. Like, when you run into someone saying it's impossible, you know, don't just accept that. Not because they think it's impossible, it's just their limited mind. Don't let yourself be held back. If I would not have had this part of me that said, I am not accepting this, not gonna happen, I might have come home and say like, okay, I have to sell the house, and accept that as my truth, and then go from there. And I might not be, I'm in my house right now. I would have perhaps sold it. I've told this to a lot of people. I'm like, imagine I would have believed her. Imagine I would have sold the house because I would have believed her. But some part of me said, nope, I wanted it so bad. I was like, I'm not taking impossible. There has to be a way. So the thing is, don't just take impossible. Don't just take it. I virtually have no impossible in my dictionary. No. Just no. If I really want it, I keep looking. Keep looking, keep pushing. What's the way? What's the way I can do it? And sometimes the impossible is like your inner voice saying it's impossible. Don't buy into that either. It's just a mind hack. It's just your mind not seeing the way, not seeing the how. But it's not because you don't see the how that there isn't one. You just haven't figured it out yet. So keep pushing, keep looking. Don't accept it. And reach out to people. Reach out for help. Go and look for people who might know the how, might know a different way. But don't quit. Don't just quit. Especially when it's related to something that you really want, you really desire, maybe in your business. You know, I've been faced with difficult months in my business, building up the business, COVID hitting. I've had very difficult months. And I had like, oh, I don't know how I'm going to do this. But I found the ways. It was never impossible. It's never impossible. Keep looking. So that's just what I wanted to share. Don't just take impossible. Turn it into a possibility, but just keep looking and don't just accept it for the truth. I love you all. Bye-bye.